by the media or have been used in a political sense by the state in order to, as an example of a counterculture that was actually politically unsafe. And the second part of your essay, correct me if I'm wrong, because I watched your video and that wasn't in the original draft of the script that you sent. But the second part of that essay was inspired by sort of my notes on your argument, which was that genuine countercultures, which are actually politically unsafe, don't tend to really get any attention or any representation at all, and if they do, the true ideas are never genuinely represented. They're mischaracterized or they're attacked as being associated with terrorists or thieves, uh, or the state will try and co-opt them by, of course, misrepresenting the principles or praxis that make up the action in order to try and associate it with some sort of politically safe affiliation which they can control and exploit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that might have been part of it. But that's actually, I think, the point that you were making, at least if I'm understanding it correctly, is that agorism and the praxis of counter-economics is a true counterculture, and it always sort of has been, but that's especially the case now because, for one, I'd say most of society is leaning towards it as a sort of proclivity. It's becoming more beneficial for more people to associate in subversive manners that undermine the state or its political institutions that it tries to get people to associate with to benefit itself, like Walmart, for instance, or these banks.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. The thing is that the cost of subverting the state and engaging in counter-economics is diminishing, and it's rapidly diminishing day by day.
Right.
I mean, nowadays it's like someone actually asked me to try to find them a less than legally acquired free copy of an unspecified piece of software. It took me like 5 minutes.
Yeah, not only is the cost going down, but because more people are using it, more people are investing their time and resources in ways to make it more profitable and more consistent to trade around these networks and around an infrastructure based on the expectation that people can associate in a self-employed free manner, which is less capital intensive and more more peer-to-peer, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Now, yeah, basically we started this stream to reply to Mr. Dapperton's reply to my video. And we have that queued up. Give me a second here to... Hopefully I can get this right.
Are we going to to mention what happened in response in the comment section?
Later.
All right, because before the stream, you were telling me all about it, and you seemed really excited to get to that.
I'm honestly saving the best for last. I am very excited. Also, Pumpkin Row donated $3.97. Thank you very much. Let me just pull up what he said. You guys are the best anarchist bromance. Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I have no issue with that.
That is not a controversial statement. So let me just get this screen share set up. Hopefully this works. Yep, that works. All right, can you see my thing okay?
Yep, I could see it.
All right.
Why don't you try playing it a little bit so that I can test whether or not we'll get feedback from my mic so that we can hear it.
Let me see that. Yeah, we're good. Oh. I don't hear it.
Well, there's no audio coming from your. Okay, hold on.
Oh, there it goes.
All right.
Yeah, there's a little music thing.
Oh my god. Yeah, I hadn't seen his new intro until this video, but he's going for a style that doesn't fit his presentation in his videos. The intro suggests like Dr. Layman or Philosophy Tube. You, not necessarily that type of argument or that type of philosophy, but that style of presentation. Like someone's going to be citing books or someone's going to be citing specific footnotes within academic texts, and they're going to be talking about the technical debate between how one even reaches a conclusion within a specific overarching philosophical group. But then you actually click on Dapperton's videos, and I kind of I was gonna respond. I was a little tempted a couple days ago to respond to a video like back and forth he made between himself and somebody called Guerrilla Radio, formerly known as Dark Scythe, which they responded to Dapperton making a video claiming that like Trump is the counterculture, or he's anti-establishment, the establishment's against Trump. Mega
Yeah, sure.
And the other guy's like, no, the establishment's against Bernie. And the reason I brought that up is just because the intellectual depth to a lot of the arguments Dapperton makes, it's really on par with like listening to a middle schooler argue for who the best Smash main is. Which, by the way, it's Lucas, and I will fight anyone on the side of the street who claims otherwise.
I mean, I haven't played Smash in a long ass time, so I can't say one way or another, and I definitely couldn't say who the best Smash Ultimate main is. Though I would very much be excited to try out Ridley. Now, with this in mind, yeah, I think everything you said about the intro is pretty accurate to what I was thinking. It's meant to project something that's overly classy, something that's academic, when in fact I think you remember his old intro with that was ridiculously metal, or that was unnecessarily edgy and metal, where he would just straight up murder communists and Nazis. That was more accurate to what his style of content is, because his real thing is just to own the libs. It's basically he took SJW's Get Owned compilations and made that into his style of commentary. And that's really what he's best at. That's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It's not a criticism. It's just an observation that his current intro, yeah, it's just not fitting to his content. So I'm just gonna go ahead.
That seems to be more fitting of like his style of argumentation, because I mean, like when it comes to his arguments, they're just really weak, and that's not something that is particularly new. I've gone back and watched like even some of my older videos, and even back then you can see some of the problems today, like assuming that the libertarian praxis is shrinking the state, or to assume that an ethical argument that within ethical philosophy something could be like seen on scale, so something could be more or less ethical based on a scale, as opposed to individual acts of aggression just being individual actions, and there's not really such thing as something being more or less criminal. Something's criminal, it is. Something isn't, it isn't.
Mm-hmm. Hold on a second. Is this thing still up? Yes, it is. Why is that the case?
Oh god, we're getting a lot of comments.
Yeah, this thing seems to be pretty hot. Right, get rid of this thing.
Also, yeah, not to mention though, people are pointing out in the comments here, they're talking about like his current support of the state. You're in Brazil now, Bunny.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't heard him in the voice chats?
No,
He's been in Brazil.
he seems to just be bouncing around everywhere.
Well, that's good, but anyways,
yeah.
thank you for the $5, Riley. Now I just need to figure out how to
because of how big the counter economist scene in South America is right now, it seems like that would be a pretty great place to be right now, admittedly. So
yeah. Now let me turn screen share back on. All right, there we go. Now let's get started with the video, because otherwise, at this rate, we'll never start the video.
Okay, I'll mention it after, I guess, or around the time we mention the comments.
Yeah. It seems a little long, doesn't it?
The intro is not too long.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to talk about a filthy heretic video. Yes, he's a libertarian like me. And yes, I agree with him on most things, but I think in this video he reaches a little bit. So I really appreciate having this opportunity to explain what I disagree with him on. Let's start the video and dive in, shall we? Also, before the video starts, I want to point out that Filthy Heretic sounds like Sir Hiss from Robin Hood. Kind of funny.
What?
Sire, you have an absolute skill for encouraging contributions from the poor.
He keeps hissing when he talks.
Now, think historically. Every 1 or 2 decades, there is a major counterculture that emerges, demonized by moral guardians and priests of sadism alike as being degenerate, subversive, or any number of nasty-sounding adjectives.
Sire, did you see what they stop hissing in my ear?
They're often portrayed as naive.
You sound nothing like that.
I mean, his point is that in my videos, I tend to have an exaggerated sound, which, I mean, it's true, I do, but, I mean, it's not really criticism. I mean, I know it's just an observation, and it's not really anything, but yeah.
That's petty as fuck. What kind of Mean Girls bullshit is that?
I have no freaking idea.
I thought at first it was just like, oh, Dapperton, this guy is a snake and you're a lizard, so you can make that comparison, but no. Okay, he's just being petty. I mean, that works too. I
actually can't tell if it's just something I normally do as a result of my accent, and no, I couldn't tell you what accent that is. Or if it's just the way that my audio gets edited. Because, I mean, I do edit my audio. I do add a whole bunch of things to make me sound a lot more crisp and a lot more clean than I usually do right now, even though the microphone that I'm using right now is literally the same microphone I use for my videos. But, yeah, I don't know how to fix that. I wouldn't know how to fix that. And quite frankly, I'm not terribly motivated to try and fix it.
You sound fine. Don't worry about it.
I'm not going to be worried about it. In fact, I got a lot of positive comments in the Discord channel when we were discussing it earlier that a lot of people actually like it. But anyways, yeah, let's keep going.
Constructs of government. Charges of victimizing other people, including themselves, are often levied against them. The Israeli government's appointed moral guardians banned the Beatles from performing in their country, according to Resolution 691. I'm getting a little off topic here. The point is that mainstream culture and the powers that be are usually quite antagonistic to the counterculture. Most countercultures have a musical genre associated with them, one that eventually becomes mainstream. Fans of certain types of music grow older and gain levels of power themselves. Record labels realize it's profitable to sign on these musicians and market to young people, making what was once a horrific blight upon taste and moral sensibilities becomes normal. Then, eventually, it becomes a music anachronism. Where are the new breakout genres of music? Well, what are people's favorite genres of music nowadays? Some people like punk, some people like jazz, Some people like symphonic metal, and you, dear viewer, have your own favorite genre. Feel free to fill it in. But then I realized I was thinking about it all wrong. Then it hit me.
Conservatism is the new counterculture.
Conservatism isn't a counterculture whatsoever.
So, in your opinion, Filthy, music is
I've got to just pause there real quick because I did notice that he clipped a lot of my video and then made random jump cuts. I'm not sure why. Maybe he was just trying to save time on the video so that his video wasn't just an entire replay of mine, but I do get the sense that it takes a lot of what I said out of context and completely misses a lot of the argumentation and reasoning that would normally fill in those gaps.
No, because he almost plays nothing from the second half of your video, and he tries to represent your argument as making the case that state media tends to just overtly attack establishment, or not establishment, but
Conservative?
countercultural groups, what you're characterizing as countercultural groups or countercultural movements.
counterculture, but conservatism isn't. Because conservatism bleeds at a small state, and you, filthy heretic, want zero state. So, in your opinion,
I'm sorry, what? I don't.
Oh god. Oh man.
I mean, I was pretty clear on what my criteria is for counterculture very early on in the video, and not once did I say a counterculture has to be for a small state or a no state.
Have to be associated with politics at all.
I mean, I was thinking about this before when I was replying in a comment to this video, but what were the politics of jazz? Or was that just music that people enjoyed?
Well, I mean, there are certain common themes promoted by the music, and
yeah, there are.
I don't know much about the jazz movement, admittedly, but I can tell you that, blues originally was demonized, and blues was demonized because a lot of the songs promoted a sort of self-sufficiency narrative. The punk music, the punk theme, the punk movement was demonized pretty heavily, and the common themed punk music was whatever was just anti-conformity, which is just a relative concept that anybody could apply to themselves based upon whatever they think conformity is, much less whatever they think a culture is or an establishment is, which is my second point that I'd like to get onto, which is he uses a lot of these terms with very ambiguous conceptual meaning in a way where they could be interpreted in a series of different ways. Establishment would be sort of the first example of that. Establishment is a bit of an anti-concept, but it's not necessarily an anti-concept as much as it is. It's designed to imply that whatever's wrong in society is just a group of individuals conspiring together for their own individual interests, and that obfuscates any criticism of the state or what one interprets to be any sort of system that's causing problems in society, whether it's the state, whether it's banking, whether it's international organizations. And then we can get on to conservatism. Well, what type of conservatism are you referring to, and in what context are you referring to conservatism? Social conservatism? Because social conservatism cannot be a countercultural movement by definition.
It's and I make this point in my video explicitly. that conservatism, it reinforces the mainstream cultural norms. What defines a counterculture is that its cultural norms are going to be directly different to, and most oftentimes oppositional to, mainstream culture. Whereas, especially social conservatism, and by conservatism, I interpret that to mean the kind of Burkean conservatism, like the political conservatism, which of course is very socially conservative, but it reinforces mainstream culture, very much so. You ask any person who self identifies as a conservative, chances are they're going to be highly in support of a national defense, in support of cultural patriotism, in support of nationalist ideas.
Well, even if we were to get past the fact that if we're going to talk about politicians, all politicians have a sort of uniform interest, and that's to work towards goals which they see as being in the interests of the state. And their view of what the state's interests are of course very uniform.
Now
So
hold that thought, because it's going to be useful to elaborate on a little bit further.
okay, well, I was what I was going to say, and it's not really an expansion upon that thought, but another point I was going to make is just, aside from the fact that you can't really have a political movement, by which I see, by political I mean a movement or an affiliation which explicitly sees state policy as a tool to achieve its ends. You cannot have a political movement which fundamentally is competing with the state, which is a big part of the reason why conservatives have political conservatives, so to speak. Their history is not even really small government, whatever that means. Uh, I have an entire video explaining how that concept is flawed. The idea that states exist on a scale, but
Let's continue with the video.
well, all I was gonna say is the history of conservative politicians is just at most fistuming protectionist, extremely statist policies, while claiming that they're pursuing free market ends.
All right.
Jesus Christ, the chat is blowing up.
I mean, we got, like, last I checked, 34 viewers. Now why isn't this thing working? It's not responding. That's not good. Really, right now?
If I get this outfit dirty, I'm going to be so annoyed.
Nice.
That's not good.
Oh, this is great.
Then it hit.
Was it playing on your end or?
No, it's like starting and stopping.
Is the new count.
Are we synced up now or?
Not at all. Actually, you're like way behind me. I'm actually gonna try to reload this. So let me just turn us. Freaking hell. All right, good. You're still in the room.
Potato computer gang.
It's not even our computer. It's the site.
Paul Joseph Stalin. Yeah.
That's true.
country music is a conservative culture.
I mean, country music historically and modern times reinforces mainstream narratives. If anything, like the best you could say about country music is that it was a counterculture to things like rock and roll.
It's the counterculture.
All right, there we go. We're synced. Let me just turn off my audio.
Yeah, Hoppy and Killer figured the stream was gonna piss people off, so what the hell? Why care about about trying to fucking appease sensibilities?
All right, there we go.
No, conservatism isn't as extreme or as effective as anarchism at battling liberalism, but it's still a counterculture, believe it or not. In fact, the reason why conservatism works so well as a counterculture is because it's not as scary or as extreme sounding as anarchism, so people will adopt it actually. Yes, I know it's technically more extreme as it uses more violence and force than anarchism, whereas anarchism uses none. But most people don't know or even think about that. To most, conservatism is less scary to adopt as that scary ass term anarchism. Most people think that word means chaos, and they obviously don't think chaos is a good ideology, so they will never adopt it. So for that reason right now, conservatism is the most popular counterculture on the planet right now.
So, is he telling me that jazz in its time wasn't scary, that hip hop wasn't scary, that punk rock and that whole anti-conformist counterculture wasn't scary to people?
Well, it's
People
not
don't adopt it because it's not scary. They adopt it because they like it. They like the trappings associated with it. They like the message or the feelings associated with it, like the anti-conformist message of the punk rock movement as mentioned earlier. People aren't going to become ideological anarchists because they find it to be terribly persuasive, at least not most of the time. They're going to be well, torrenters. They're going to be software pirates because it's more profitable for them to do so. It really has nothing to do with ideology. This is why I put so little emphasis on my video as I did about politics, because fundamentally this whole thing is anti-political. Though the best you could say about it is that it's mega political. It's bigger than any one philosophy or another. It's fundamentally the relationship between economics and violence.
And just what were you gonna say? Sorry.
I was just finished what I was saying.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't have anything to add.
Okay, well, let's continue.
Not saying it's the best. I'm saying it's the most popular. Now, I could already see it. Filthy Heretic's going to fire back and say that conservatism.
Well, can we
isn't
pause
real
for a
time.
second? I just as it pertains to anarchy, I don't really think that it's people believe that it means chaos. It's that they don't understand how society would operate because they've been brainwashed by public school into thinking that in order to have any sort of rights, you need to have a rule of law. You need to have state imposing legislative fiat on the people. And that's a very easy concept to refute, but just as you said, I don't expect to achieve an anarchy or a libertarian society by having debates with all 350 million people in the United States, 8 billion people around the world. No. How I expect it to be achieved is to subvert the state's infrastructure in a way which makes the state impossible to continue existing.
Mm-hmm. Now, he's going to try to put words in my mouth as make an argument that, of course, I would never make because it's fucking retarded.
Yeah, Filthy Heretic's going to fire back and say that conservatism isn't real counterculture because anarchism is more effective.
What?
Yet,
I mean, I said the comment that I would be embarrassed to make an argument like that because it's an absolute non sequitur. Conservatism is not a counterculture because anarchism is more persuasive.
Conservatism
One does
is
not relate to the other.
conservatism isn't a counterculture because it's literally promoted as something which the state wants you to believe in and wants you to internalize your interests around.
It's very much a reinforcement of mainstream cultural narratives. The fact of the matter is, like, a plurality of Americans do identify with it. So to say that it's some kind of that it's somehow subversive or some countercultural to what is mainstream in the United States, is it different than what is portrayed in the mainstream media? Sure, but both the mainstream media and conservatives agree on multiple fundamental premises, namely the supremacy of the state. The supremacy of the divine overlords who preside over the state, the divinity of the state itself, and its absolute dominance as a cultural fact in our lives. So, no, they're not really countercultural whatsoever. Their differences are, quite frankly, marginal. The best you could say about conservatism is that it's a subculture, which, if you're going to be talking about like tailgating, furries, hillbillies, that sort of thing, you could make the argument that it's a subculture, but no, not really. I mean, should we just keep going?
I guess.
All right.
Yes, it's more effective, but it doesn't mean it's still not effective. It doesn't stop being effective because something's more effective. It's still a counterculture. It may not.
I'm sorry to pause here, but effective? What does he mean by effective? I'm assuming he means in terms of being able to.
Because, like I told you in the beginning, from his perspective, his idea of libertarianism is that libertarianism is aiming to achieve anything which the person who is advocating for it sees as being aiming to shrink the government. Which, I mean, that's, if you say it like that, you know, the problem with that is revealed almost immediately. For one thing, it's entirely based on relative preference and how one sees information as opposed to actually having any sort of cohesive truth claim against the state. If we are going to look at an anti-authoritarian a rebuttal, it doesn't create a rebuttal to authoritarianism. It doesn't create a rebuttal to political rule. It doesn't even characterize what political rule is. It's just saying, I want to sit at home and drink Mountain Dew and play Call of Duty. So that means I'm against the state because I see that the state as being an obstacle to that goal. And the problem with that is it doesn't make a necessary case for anything. You can make that exact same argument in favor of any ends. And then we get to the second problem: how exactly do you define shrinking the state? Or
yeah, we've already gone into that.
Well, what exactly about the state being smaller would make it less authoritarian? Because I don't know about you, but you know, I'd say quite a few, like the Kingdom of Pomerania, for instance, had lower effective tax rates than the US government currently has. If anything, having a less domestically expansive state, historically we've seen, and as an incentive for the state, only serves as an incentive to expand its influence internationally upon other nations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, I mean, that's not even really the state being less expansive. It's just the state investing more of its resources into imperialism as opposed to domestic interference.
All right.
Not be the best counterculture, but it's still a counterculture. It's like saying that, yeah, hand sanitizer might be more effective at killing germs, and it might be quicker at killing germs. Like anarchism is quicker and better at killing liberalism, but hot soapy water still kills germs, right? Just like conservatism still kills liberalism. and socialism and communism.
Wrecking
and
the
leftism
liberals with nationalist socialism.
I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, I've always gotten the sense that this was his metric of success, whether or not you own the libs. I mean, wasn't it in his? I remember one time he was in our Discord channel, and he was actually unironically defending Trump on the basis that he owns the libs.
Whether or not you own the libs is the only metric for determining success.
Boy, where we're going, there won't be any more libs.
Remember when you said this?
The point is that mainstream culture and the powers that be are usually quite antagonistic to the counterculture.
Everybody knows that leftists in the mainstream media demonize conservatism at every single corner. They call them sexist, racist, homophobic, xenophobic, ableist, you name it. They call them deplorables. Hey,
We addressed this earlier. While yes, mainstream culture does demonize cultures that they don't like, it is by no means exclusive to countercultures, and what defines a counterculture is significantly larger than just the mainstream media disliking them. They have a set of cultural norms that are different than and oftentimes oppositional to the mainstream culture, which conservatism does not have.
Also, what isn't like just about what didn't you make that exact point in the video, but he clipped past it? Like it's not
Yes.
something we said here, but he just didn't address it in this video.
Yes, and it was in the first half of the video when I was defining my terms. And I also said it again when he did clip past that point, actually, when I was addressing Paul Joseph Stalin's point about conservatism being the new counterculture, that conservatism just reinforces mainstream cultural norms. He completely ignored that, which is why in my comment I asked multiple times if he actually watched this video, because I'm not sure he did.
Also, as I pointed out just a second ago, occasionally, as a strategy for combating countercultural movements, the state will try to affiliate politically safe movements with a movement, with the principles and praxis of a movement, which is actually against the state's interests. Not only that, but quite, in the case of conservatism, well, conservatism is an example of this, but something the state will also do is they'll advertise politically safe movements as being anti-establishment, whatever that means.
And
Against
considering how mainstream Trump is, to the point where he had a TV show on a mainstream media network, I'll let you come to your own conclusions about how countercultural Trump truly is.
Or how he was giving donations to the Clinton Foundation until as recently as 2014.
And he was openly bragging about it in his presidential campaign, so there's really no excuse. But anyways, I'm going to start playing again.
the current establishment loathes, hates conservatism, making it a huge counterculture. And so, yeah, they are the counterculture. As you said, they're attacked just like any counterculture in music is. So why isn't this a counterculture? They're being attacked by the mainstream media. They're being attacked by the people that hold the power right now, which is leftists. They're a counterculture by every way fathomed today.
Oh crap! I messed up.
It was
anyways,
like,
yeah.
I can find the point that we were at again. It was
like 5:14.
Yeah. But just as to what he was saying, what does that even mean? I mean, I heard what he said, but his concepts and what he's espousing right now, they're so vague, like they can mean anything. And
I mean, it was.
What does he mean by power in the context of power? What's he talking about when he?
I think I can actually explain that. How far have you gotten into Sovereign Individual?
I've gotten, I'd say, 20 pages in.
Well, I'm finished. I'm starting up chapter 3. At the end of chapter 2, he starts talking about how in the Middle Ages that people didn't really understand cause and effect, and that when people were trying to speak, they spoke in terms of symbols in terms of ideas, in terms of like vague concepts. And he gives this example of a diary entry describing like a mass murder in Barcelona, and it just refers to a bunch of emotions, feelings, and just concepts. And you can only vaguely tell that something really bad happened because it's like anger and vengeance and vituperation swept the streets, and that's how it was basically described. And the point that they made there is that this entire thought process to perceive the world in symbols and concepts ultimately short circuits logical cause and effect reasoning, which is what I think is happening here. I don't think Dapperton is being dishonest. I think he's just using a, for lack of a better term, liberal thought process that fundamentally perceives the world in symbols and concepts rather than cause and effect.
Well, I understand that, but just what I was trying to point out is that these descriptions he's providing